There has been a problem recently with Marvel, which has peaked with the recent release of The Marvels. However, I think people are missing the real problem with this series. There are many different parts that people have criticized, and I'm going to go over them one by one before getting to what I think is the real problem. Now, part 1, the characters. Many people have compared the recent Marvel movies to a paint by numbers. Numerous characters are described as checkboxes, with forced humor and poor characterization. And this includes some complaints that they no longer even feel like heroes. The car chase in Wakanda Forever specifically brought complaints as our heroes use lethal force on innocent police officers who are trying to detain a girl who built a war mech with stolen weapons technology. Then we have to discuss the controversies. Current Disney employees have consistently told people not to watch their movies. This article from Bounding Into Comics is just a taste of the plain antagonism we have seen towards the fandom. And Brie Larson, specifically, is quoted here dismissing all criticism of Wrinkle in Time because of the gender and age of the critics, despite the primary problems of pacing and characterization having nothing to do with the audience, and as I've mentioned before, are mostly from the source book. Now, I don't want to get into the weeds of this, since I have nothing to add to the discussion or politics. I only mention it because it would be remiss to ignore such an item. After all, when you tell people not to watch your movie, how can you blame people for doing what you asked? This blends into part 3. Darwinism. I know this sounds odd, but it's important. We have our survival bias to our memory. It's almost impossible to know if something will catch on, and so media companies have traditionally been very willing to cut things that aren't working. On the other hand, Carol Danvers and Kamala Khan are not popular. In October 2023, the female lead titles on Comic Book Revolutions showed a Captain Marvel #1 debuting at number 58 on the monthly charts, and Miss Marvel 3 is at 84. That's embarrassing. And yet it's consistent for these characters. The Marvels have never had strong comic sales. And it's not better on Disney+. The Miss Marvel TV show had the lowest ratings on the platform, and yet they still greenlit her movie and have already confirmed a season 2. Marvel is not letting these characters fail, and they're throwing good money after bad. And thus we have the problem. Captain and Miss Marvel are now a niche characters, and thus they're becoming a niche movie. And that brings us to the last point. The money. So, with all this hand-waving and explanations, let's look at the numbers. The box office is $202 million. Now, while some people might talk about how terrible it is, let's put that another way. Roughly 6% of America went to go see that film. That's a gigantic number of people. Despite everything I have said previously, looking at the raw income, the MCU is still a powerhouse franchise. So why is this a catastrophic failure? The production budget, $270 million. Now, a movie generally needs to make 4 times its budget at the box office to actually break even. This is because the studio only gets half the ticket price, and the production budget doesn't include marketing. And generally, a studio spends about the same amount on marketing as production. So using these assumptions, Disney could have lost up to $400 million on Marvels. And that is not a gap that merchandising is going to make up. So this comes to the real problem. A problem that Disney has suffered from greatly. A completely out-of-control production budget that's almost unhinged from reality. And it isn't even just the superhero genre. Wish also topped $200 million to make, and the new Snow White is at least over $300 million, That's before they decide to replace the dwarves with CGI characters. This is how the mouse can consistently make 9 digits at the box office and still lose their shirts. Warner Brothers isn't doing much better on their comic books. Flash brought in $270 million on a $200 million budget, and Black Adam brought $393 on $195. Not as bad as the Marvels, but still losing huge amounts overall. To compare, companies that can keep their budgets reasonable are making a lot of money. Five Nights at Freddy's made $284 on a $20 million budget. And we can't even blame the fantasy genres, as Mario cost only $100 million and Barbie cost $145. Each of these are half the cost of their respective Disney counterparts. So, coming full circle, everything else, the writing, the fan base management, the niche characters, and small target audience, could be excused if Disney could just get their accounting into line. The real problem with the Marvels is that Disney rode high on an astronomical incomes from their Marvel and animation juggernauts and then got complacent. They let their budgets slip off the rails in a way that's almost unbelievable. Therefore, box office returns that should be impressive are instead devastating. That's the real problem with the Marvels, the pocketbook. And until Disney can get their budgets in line, they will need to either deliver a mega hit every single time or continue to lose money. Thanks for listening, y'all.